The sun hung low over the bustling streets of Parkside, a small but vibrant neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago. Its rows of neatly painted row houses and colorful storefronts painted an image of a tight-knit community. But beneath the surface, an undercurrent of unease rippled through the air. For decades, Parkside had been a haven for working-class families and small business owners. Its streets were alive with the laughter of children playing basketball in driveways and the hum of neighbors catching up over backyard fences. Yet, as the city grew and its borders blurred, trouble found its way into the heart of Parkside. Logan Carter stepped out of the corner gym he'd reopened just a few months earlier. The heavy, metallic scent of sweat still clung to his clothes, mingling with the faint aroma of barbecue wafting from a food truck parked nearby. Logan was tall and broad, his build unmistakably that of a fighter, though his face carried a quiet weariness that told of a life that had seen its share of battles both in and out of the ring. Parkside was home for Logan, though it wasn't the same neighborhood he'd left years ago. After retiring from professional MMA, Logan had come back with the dream of using his experience to help young people find purpose through martial arts. The gym had been his sanctuary as a teenager, and he hoped it could offer others the same lifeline. Inside the gym, the walls were adorned with old fight posters and photographs of Logan in his prime. His hands raised in victory, his face lit with the kind of fire he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't about glory anymore. It was about redemption and community. "Hey, coach." Logan turned to see Jalen, one of his most promising students, jogging toward him with a grin that stretched ear to ear. Jalen was 16, with wiry muscles and an infectious enthusiasm that reminded Logan of himself at that age. "You coming to Marisol's later?" Jalen asked, bouncing slightly on his toes. "Yeah, I'll swing by," Logan replied, patting the young man on the shoulder. "Go on and hit the showers. You earned it today." Jalen darted off, leaving Logan with a rare moment of quiet. He glanced out the gym's wide front windows, watching as the shadows of the city stretched longer with the setting sun. A group of men loitered near the corner, their voices low but tense. Logan's gaze lingered on them, his instincts prickling. Marisol Rivera's cafe was a block down from the gym, nestled between a barbershop and a convenience store. The scent of freshly baked empanadas greeted Logan as he pushed open the door, and a bell jingled to announce his arrival. "Logan," Marisol called from behind the counter, her dark curls framing a face both warm and weathered. She was holding a tray of steaming pastries, her young son, Nico, playing with a set of toy cars at a nearby table. "Smells good in here," Logan said, his voice carrying the same calm, measured tone he used in the ring. Marisol set the tray down and gave him a pointed look. "You need to eat something that isn't protein powder or energy bars." Before Logan could reply, the bell above the door jingled again, and the atmosphere shifted. 3 men sauntered in, their presence loud despite their silence. At the front was Ray Doran, a wiry man with sharp features and an air of authority that demanded attention. His crew, Vince and Tucker, flanked him, their expressions smug and predatory. Logan felt the weight of their presence before anyone spoke. Marisol stiffened, her hands gripping the edge of the counter as Ray approached. "Evening, Marisol," Ray drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "Nice place you got here. Real cozy." "We're closed," Marisol said, her voice steady but firm. Ray smirked, ignoring her. He leaned on the counter, his gaze flicking briefly to Nico before settling back on her. It'd be a shame if something happened to this place. Unpredictable world out there. Fires, broken windows. You know how it goes. Logan stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow that seemed to fill the room. "You heard her," he said evenly. "Time to leave." Ray turned slowly, his eyes narrowing as he sized up Logan. "And who's this? The new bouncer?" "Just a guy getting his coffee," Logan replied. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made Vince and Tucker take a step back. Ray didn't move. "This isn't your fight, big guy." Logan's gaze didn't waver. "It is now." The tension crackled, thick as a storm cloud, until Ray finally stepped back with a smirk. "Suit yourself," he said, motioning for his crew to follow him. "But don't say I didn't warn you." As the bell jingled behind them, Marisol exhaled shakily. Logan, you didn't have to do that. They're dangerous. Logan nodded, his expression unreadable. I know, but so am I. That night, Logan sat in the dim light of his small apartment, the sounds of the city humming outside his window. He replayed the encounter in his mind. The way Ray had looked at Nico, the menace in his tone. Logan had faced countless opponents in the cage, but this felt different. This wasn't a fight he could walk away from. The next morning, the graffiti on the gym's back wall confirmed it. Stay out of our business. Logan stood staring at the crude message, his jaw tightening. This wasn't just about him or Marisol. It was about the neighborhood, the people who had given him a second chance, and the kids like Jalen who deserved better than to grow up in fear. As he scrubbed at the paint, Logan made a quiet vow. He hadn't come back to Parkside looking for a fight, but he wouldn't back down from one, either. The neighborhood of Parkside stirred to life as the morning sun cast its light over the streets. Shops opened their doors, and the aroma of fresh bread from the local bakery mingled with the scent of asphalt warming under the day's heat. It was a scene of quiet resilience, but for those who paid attention, the cracks beneath the surface were becoming harder to ignore. Logan Carter stood outside his gym, a worn bucket and sponge in hand. He scrubbed at the graffiti scrawled across the back wall, the faded words "Stay out of our business" taunting him with every stroke. Despite his effort, the red paint refused to budge entirely, leaving behind a faint but persistent stain. "You're wasting your time," said a voice from behind. Logan turned to see Marcus Delgado, a burly mechanic in his 40s. Marcus owned the auto shop 2 blocks down and had a reputation as someone you didn't mess with. His calloused hands rested on his hips as he surveyed the wall, a wry grin tugging at his lips. "Looks like someone's trying to send a message," Marcus said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Yeah, well, I'm not much for reading between the lines," Logan replied, tossing the sponge back into the bucket. "You hear anything about Ray Doran?" Marcus nodded grimly. "Him and his crew have been squeezing half the businesses on this block. They call it protection. It's a racket, plain and simple. Most folks pay just to keep the peace." "And the ones who don't?" Logan asked. Marcus gave a pointed look at the graffiti. "They make examples out of them. Last week, they trashed Mrs. Patel's convenience store after she refused to pay. Broke a window, stole half her stock. Cops showed up 2 hours later, took some notes, and left. Haven't heard a peep since." Logan's jaw tightened. "Someone needs to stand up to them." Marcus snorted. "You think the cops care about what happens down here? We're on our own, Carter." Later that day, Logan walked down to Marisol's cafe. The bell above the door jingled, and Marisol looked up from the counter with a weary smile. "Logan," she said, her voice warm but tired. "Coffee?" "Please," Logan replied, settling onto a stool. As Marisol poured the coffee, Logan noticed Nico coloring at a table in the corner. The boy seemed oblivious to the tension that hung over the adults, his small hands gripping crayons with the intensity only a child could muster. "They came back last night," Marisol said quietly, setting the mug in front of Logan. Logan frowned. "What happened?" "They left a note under the door." She reached beneath the counter and handed Logan a folded piece of paper. In bold, crude handwriting, it read, "Pay up, or the boy gets hurt." Logan's grip on the paper tightened, his knuckles whitening. "They threatened Nico?" Marisol nodded, her voice trembling. I can't lose him, Logan." "You won't," Logan said firmly. "We'll deal with this." Marisol hesitated. "We?" "Logan, you don't have to." "This isn't just about you," Logan interrupted. "It's about the whole neighborhood. If we don't stand up to them, they'll just keep taking." By evening, Logan was back at his gym, pacing the worn mats as he mulled over his next move. He couldn't take on Ray's gang alone. He needed allies, people who cared enough to fight back but were smart enough to do it right. As if on cue, the gym door creaked open and Elliot Cruz stepped inside. Elliot was a skinny 17-year-old with sharp eyes and a mop of unruly black hair. Logan had taken him under his wing after catching him trying to pick a lock on the gym's back door months earlier. "What do you need, coach?" Elliot asked, leaning against the wall with a smirk. Logan smirked back. I need someone who knows how to gather information. Think you're up for it? Elliot's smirk widened. What kind of information? Everything you can find on Ray Doran and his crew, Logan said. Where they hang out, who they talk to, how they operate. And I need it fast. Elliot nodded, his confidence unwavering. Consider it done. Over the next few days, Elliot proved his worth. Armed with nothing but a smartphone and a keen sense of curiosity, he began piecing together a web of information about Ray and his gang. They're running operations out of the old warehouse on 12th Street, Elliot reported one evening, sliding his phone across the counter at the gym. A grainy photo of Ray standing outside the warehouse filled the screen. Looks like they're dealing more than just intimidation. Drugs, stolen goods, you name it. Logan studied the photo, his mind racing. Good work, Elliot. Keep digging, but stay out of sight. These guys don't play around. Elliot nodded. Don't worry about me. I'm like a ghost. Logan shared Elliot's findings with Marcus, who listened intently as they sat in the dimly lit auto shop. The smell of grease and metal filled the air, and the occasional clink of tools punctuated their conversation. They're not just small-time thugs, Marcus said, running a hand over his shaved head. If they're dealing drugs, that means they've got connections outside the neighborhood. All the more reason to take them down, Logan replied. Marcus raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Walk in there and knock them out one by one? Logan grinned faintly. Something like that. Carter, Marcus said, his tone serious. You can't fight this alone. If you're serious about this, you'll need more than fists. You'll need proof. Evidence the cops can't ignore. Logan nodded slowly. Then we start gathering it. As the days passed, Logan, Marcus, and Elliot formed an unlikely alliance. Elliot continued to track the gang's movements, while Marcus enlisted a few trusted locals to keep an eye on the streets. They were careful, never drawing too much attention, but the tension in the air was palpable. One evening, Logan returned to the gym to find Jalen waiting for him. The young man's usual grin was absent, replaced by a look of determination. I heard what you're doing, Jalen said. I want to help. Logan hesitated. This isn't your fight, Jalen. It's my neighborhood, Jalen replied. I'm not scared of them. Logan studied the boy for a moment before nodding. All right, but you listen to me and Marcus. No risks, no heroics. Got it? Got it, Jalen said, his grin returning. The first real clash came late one night when Logan caught Vince and Tucker attempting to vandalize Marisol's cafe again. Logan confronted them in the alley behind the shop, his towering frame stopping them in their tracks. You've got one chance to walk away, Logan said, his voice calm but firm. Vince sneered, pulling a crowbar from his jacket. And if we don't? Logan stepped forward, his fists clenched. Then you'll regret it. The fight was swift and brutal. Vince swung first, but Logan ducked the blow with practiced ease, countering with a sharp jab that sent Vince staggering. Tucker tried to tackle Logan, but the former fighter's years of training made quick work of the gang member. As they stumbled away, clutching their bruises, Logan stood tall, his breath steady. This was just the beginning, and he knew the real battle was yet to come. That night, Logan returned to his apartment, his knuckles sore but his resolve unshaken. The shadow over Parkside was growing darker, but Logan was determined to bring the light. The fight for the neighborhood had only just begun. The gray morning sky mirrored Logan Carter's mood as he walked the familiar streets of Parkside. The quiet resilience of the neighborhood was still there, but it was being tested more every day. Marisol's cafe was boarded up after the latest attack, a grim reminder of the danger that lurked just out of sight. Yet, Logan felt something stirring, a growing sense of resolve, not just in himself but in the people around him. He wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. At the gym that evening, Logan gathered a small group of people he trusted. They sat in a rough circle on the worn mats, the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above providing the only sound until Logan spoke. Thank you for coming, he began, his deep voice steady but firm. We all know what's happening in Parkside. Ray Doran and his crew think they own this neighborhood. They've been terrorizing people, hurting businesses, and threatening families. It's time we did something about it. Marcus, arms crossed and leaning against the wall, grunted his agreement. You're preaching to the choir, Carter. The question is, what are we gonna do? Logan nodded. We're going to fight back, but not the way they expect. We're going to be smart. We'll gather evidence, work together, and show them they can't scare us. Elliot, perched on an old punching bag near the corner, raised a hand. I've already got some dirt on them. Ray's crew is running drugs out of that warehouse on 12th. It's their main operation, and if we can get proof, the cops will have to step in. Marisol, seated beside Logan, looked uneasy. What if the police don't act? We've seen it before. They take a report and nothing changes. Logan's jaw tightened. Then we give them no choice. We'll document everything, videos, photos, testimonies. If we make enough noise, they can't ignore us. The group murmured their agreement, the spark of hope igniting into determination. Over the next week, the resistance began to take shape. Marcus recruited a handful of trusted neighbors to act as lookouts, keeping an eye on Ray's movements and alerting the group to any trouble. Elliot set up a makeshift surveillance network using old smartphones and security cameras donated by sympathetic locals. He worked tirelessly from his bedroom, which had become a hub of cables and monitors, his tech skills proving invaluable. Marisol, despite her initial hesitation, became the heart of the group. She reached out to other business owners, rallying their support and encouraging them to share their stories. Her cafe became a meeting point for the resistance, a place where people could feel safe to speak out. One evening, as Logan helped Jalen practice his footwork at the gym, Marcus arrived with a stack of printed flyers. "What's this?" Logan asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "A little public relations," Marcus replied with a smirk, handing him one of the flyers. It read, "Take back Parkside, join the fight for our neighborhood." Logan raised an eyebrow. "We're putting this out in the open?" Marcus shrugged. "Ray already knows we're not rolling over. Might as well let the whole neighborhood know we're serious." The flyers worked better than any of them expected. Over the next few days, people started showing up at the gym, asking how they could help. Some were business owners who had been targeted by the gang. Others were just neighbors who were tired of living in fear. Among the newcomers was Luis Ortega, an ex-police officer who had retired early after an injury. Logan recognized the steady, no-nonsense demeanor as soon as Luis walked through the door. "I heard about what you're doing," Luis said, his voice calm but authoritative. "If you're serious about this, I can help. I know how these guys operate." Logan extended a hand, shaking Luis's firmly. "We could use someone with your experience." As Luis integrated into the group, his knowledge of police procedures proved invaluable. He taught them how to collect evidence properly, ensuring it would hold up in court. He also trained the lookouts on how to spot and report suspicious activity without putting themselves in harm's way. The group's first real success came late one night when Elliot intercepted a text message on a burner phone Ray's crew had been using. The message detailed a shipment of drugs scheduled to arrive at the warehouse. Logan and Marcus decided it was the perfect opportunity to test their plan. Armed with hidden cameras, Logan and Marcus staked out the warehouse from a nearby rooftop. The night was cold, and the damp air seeped through their jackets, but neither of them complained. "There," Marcus whispered, pointing as a black SUV pulled up to the warehouse's loading dock. Logan watched as Ray emerged from the vehicle, flanked by Vince and Tucker. Several other men unloaded crates from the SUV, their movements hurried but practiced. Elliot's voice crackled through the small earpiece Logan wore. "I've got them on camera. This is gold." Logan smirked. "Good work, kid. Now let's get out of here before they spot us." The footage they collected was damning, clear evidence of illegal activity that tied Ray and his crew directly to the warehouse. Luis took the video to his contacts in the police department, and within days, the warehouse was raided. Several of Ray's men were arrested, and a significant stash of drugs was seized. Despite the victory, Logan knew the fight was far from over. Ray wasn't the type to back down, and the raid only made him more dangerous. True to form, Ray retaliated swiftly. 2 days after the raid, Marcus's auto shop was vandalized. Windows were smashed, tools were stolen, and a message was spray-painted across the wall. "This is just the beginning." Logan stood with Marcus outside the shop, surveying the damage. "They're scared," Logan said. "That's why they're lashing out." Marcus grunted. Doesn't make it any easier to clean up. We'll make them regret this, Logan said, his voice steady, one step at a time. As the resistance grew stronger, so did the bond between its members. Logan found himself surrounded by people who believed in the fight as much as he did. Marisol's unwavering courage, Elliot's sharp mind, Marcus's tenacity, and Luis's steady leadership all came together to form a force Ray hadn't expected. For the first time in years, the neighborhood began to feel a flicker of hope. But Logan knew the hardest battles were still ahead. Ray wasn't just going to walk away, and the next time he struck, it wouldn't be with warnings or petty vandalism. As Logan sat in his office that night, staring at the photographs pinned to the corkboard on the wall, photos of Ray, his crew, and the damage they'd caused, he felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about fighting back. It was about showing the people of Parkside that they didn't have to live in fear. Together, they could take their neighborhood back. And Logan would make sure they did. The bright, cloudless sky over Parkside did little to dispel the tension that had been building since the raid on Ray's warehouse. The neighborhood was quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that made people look over their shoulders and speak in hushed tones. Logan Carter walked down the street with purpose, his broad shoulders set and his sharp eyes scanning every corner. He could feel the weight of the neighborhood's gaze on him. People nodded cautiously as he passed, their faces etched with a mixture of hope and fear. The morning's peace was shattered when Logan reached Marcus's auto shop. The front door was hanging off its hinges, and the windows were shattered. Inside, tools and equipment lay scattered across the floor, while the walls were covered in graffiti. This is just the beginning. Marcus was already there, standing in the middle of the destruction with his hands on his hips. His face was a mask of restrained fury. "They hit me last night," Marcus said without looking up. "Must have known I'd left early." Logan surveyed the damage, his jaw tightening. "They're sending a message." Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, I got the message loud and clear. Question is, what are we going to do about it?" Logan didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a dented wrench from the floor and set it on the workbench. "We stick to the plan," he said finally. "We don't stoop to their level. We build our case and hit them where it hurts. And if they keep coming?" Marcus pressed. "Then we keep standing," Logan said firmly. That night, Logan met with the rest of the group at the gym. The mood was somber, but the resolve in the room was palpable. Marisol sat with her hands folded tightly, her worry for Nico evident in her furrowed brow. Elliot, usually quick with a joke, was uncharacteristically quiet as he tinkered with his laptop. Luis leaned against the wall, his steady presence a calming influence. "They're escalating," Logan said, addressing the group. "The raid rattled them, but now they're lashing out. Marcus's shop was hit last night, and it won't stop there." Marisol frowned. "What about the police? The raid proved they're breaking the law. Why aren't they doing more?" Luis shook his head. "They're stretched thin. Parkside isn't exactly a priority for them, and Ray knows it. He's counting on us to back down." "We're not backing down," Logan said, his voice cutting through the tension. "But we need to be smart. Every move they make gives us more to use against them." "Elliot, you still tracking their movements?" Elliot nodded. "Yeah, they've been meeting at a bar on Elm Street since the warehouse raid. It's small, out of the way, perfect for laying low." "Good," Logan said. "Keep watching. If they're regrouping, we need to know what they're planning." "What about the neighborhood?" Marisol asked. "People are scared, Logan. They see what happened to Marcus, and they're wondering if they're next." Logan took a deep breath. "We need to show them that Ray doesn't own Parkside, that we're not going to let him win. If we stand together, he loses his power." Luis nodded. "But standing together means being ready. I can train the lookouts on how to report activity without drawing attention. And Marcus, you've got those cameras set up, right?" "Already working," Marcus said. "We've got eyes on most of the main streets. It's not perfect, but it's a start." The group's preparations were put to the test just a few days later. Marisol's cafe was the next target. The attack came in the dead of night, a brick through the window, followed by a hastily tossed Molotov cocktail. Fortunately, Logan had anticipated the escalation and had installed a fire suppression system in the cafe. The fire was extinguished quickly, leaving behind charred walls but no significant damage. When Logan arrived that morning, Marisol was already outside, Nico clinging to her leg. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "They think this will scare me," she said as Logan approached, "but I'm not leaving." Logan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "They're trying to break us. Don't let them." Nico looked up at Logan, his small face serious. "Are the bad guys going to come back?" Logan crouched down, meeting the boy's gaze. "Not if we have anything to say about it." That evening, Logan called another meeting at the gym. This time, more people showed up, business owners, parents, and even a few teenagers who had been taking his self-defense classes. "We can't let them scare us into silence," Logan said, his voice carrying over the gathered crowd. "They want us to feel helpless, but we're not. Every time we stand up to them, we show them they're not in control. This is our neighborhood, and we're taking it back." The crowd erupted in applause, their fear beginning to melt into determination. Ray's retaliation grew more desperate with each passing day. Cars were keyed, storefronts were vandalized, and threats were whispered in alleyways. But the community stood firm. Each act of aggression only strengthened their resolve. One night, Elliot intercepted another message on Ray's network. This one was different, short and direct. "We need to send a real message. Take out Carter." Logan listened to Elliot's report in silence, his face unreadable. "They're coming for you," Elliot said, his voice uneasy. "Let them," Logan replied. As expected, the confrontation came quickly. Late one evening, as Logan was locking up the gym, he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. He turned to see Ray and 3 of his men standing in the dim glow of a nearby streetlight. Well, Ray said, his voice dripping with mockery. "You've been a thorn in my side, Carter." Logan squared his shoulders, his posture calm but ready. "You shouldn't have come here, Ray." Ray smirked. "You think you can fight your way out of this? You've got guts, I'll give you that. But guts won't save you." The men stepped forward, their intentions clear. Logan's fists clenched, his years of training kicking in as the first man lunged. The fight was brutal but brief. Logan's movements were precise, each punch and block honed from years of discipline. Ray watched from the sidelines, his smirk faltering as his men fell one by one. When it was over, Logan stood tall, his breathing steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Ray glared at him, his confidence shaken but not entirely broken. "This isn't over," Ray spat. "No," Logan said, his voice calm but firm. "It's just beginning." The attack only solidified Logan's resolve. He knew the fight for Parkside was far from over, but he also knew the neighborhood was stronger than Ray anticipated. Together, they were turning the tide, and Logan was ready for whatever came next. The streets of Parkside buzzed with quiet determination. The neighborhood had seen its share of struggles, but under Logan Carter's leadership, it began to rally in a way no one had thought possible. The fear Ray Doran and his crew had instilled was still present, but it was no longer paralyzing. Logan stood in the middle of his gym one late afternoon, the sharp smell of sweat and disinfectant mingling in the air. A dozen residents surrounded him, teenagers, parents, shop owners, all eager to learn how to protect themselves. Logan's self-defense classes had grown steadily, turning the gym into more than just a place to train. It was a sanctuary, a hub of strength and community. "Remember," Logan said, demonstrating a simple defensive stance, "this isn't about fighting to win. It's about staying safe. If you can avoid a fight, do it. But if you can't, make sure you're ready." Jalen, his star student, mimicked Logan's movements, his confidence growing with each session. "What if they're bigger than you?" he asked, drawing a chuckle from the crowd. Logan smiled. "Size doesn't matter as much as skill. Stay calm, use their momentum against them, and keep your head in the fight." The session ended with applause and renewed confidence. As the group filtered out, Marisol stayed behind, her young son Nico at her side. "They look up to you, Logan," she said. Logan wiped his hands on a towel, his expression serious. "They don't need to look up to me. They need to look out for each other. That's how we win this." The gym wasn't the only place where plans were forming. In a dimly lit corner of Marcus's auto shop, Logan and his inner circle gathered to strategize. Elliot's laptop sat open on the workbench, its screen displaying grainy footage of Ray's men unloading boxes at a nondescript building on the outskirts of the neighborhood. "They've shifted their operations," Elliot said, pointing to the screen. "This place is smaller than the warehouse, but it's still active. Looks like they're using it as a distribution hub." Marcus leaned over the laptop, his brow furrowed. "How do we know what's inside?" Elliot grinned. "I intercepted some texts. They're moving drugs and stolen goods. Nothing too flashy. Ray's keeping a low profile since the raid." Logan nodded. "If we can document enough evidence, we can shut this place down too." Luis, the ex-cop, crossed his arms. "We need to be careful. Ray's already on edge, and he's got eyes everywhere. One misstep, and we lose the element of surprise." Marisol glanced nervously at the door. "What if he finds out what we're doing?" "Then we're ready for him," Logan said. "But we don't wait for him to make the next move. We take the fight to him, legally." As the group prepared their next operation, Logan continued his efforts to rally the community. He visited local businesses, speaking with owners and workers about how they could contribute. Mrs. Patel offered her corner store as a safe space for lookouts, while Mr. Gibson from the hardware store donated cameras and tools to expand the surveillance network. The neighborhood was coming alive with purpose, each small act of defiance chipping away at the hold Ray's crew had over them. The breakthrough came one evening when Tommy, a young recruit from Ray's gang, showed up at Logan's gym. The boy was barely 18, his eyes wide with fear as he clutched a torn backpack to his chest. "I need your help," Tommy said, his voice trembling. Logan motioned for him to sit, his expression calm but wary. "What's going on?" Tommy glanced over his shoulder, as if expecting to be followed. "I want out. I didn't sign up for this. Ray's got us doing things I didn't think we'd ever do." "Why come to me?" Logan asked. "Because you're the only one standing up to him," Tommy said. "I've seen how you fight back. I thought, maybe you could protect me." Logan studied the boy for a moment before nodding. "All right, but if I'm going to help you, you need to tell me everything you know about Ray's operation." Tommy hesitated, then unzipped his backpack. Inside were ledgers, receipts, and photos, documents that detailed Ray's dealings in drugs, stolen property, and extortion. "This is everything," Tommy said. "It's all in there." The next step was clear. Armed with the new evidence, Logan and his team devised a plan to expose Ray's operation at the new hub. "We're hitting the building on 16th Street, Logan said, addressing the group at the auto shop. "Elliot's going to hack into their security cameras, and Marcus will run surveillance from the shop. Luis and I will be on the ground, documenting everything." "What about me?" Jalen asked, his eagerness evident. Logan shook his head. "Not this time. This is dangerous, and I can't risk you getting hurt." Jalen frowned but didn't argue. The operation went off with precision. Luis and Logan, dressed in dark clothing, approached the building under the cover of night. Elliot guided them via earpiece, directing them to blind spots in the gang's security. Inside, the pair captured video footage of Ray's men packing boxes of contraband and loading them into vans. The evidence was undeniable, and Luis quietly contacted his former colleagues in law enforcement. As the two slipped away undetected, Luis couldn't hide his admiration. "You've got guts, Carter. I didn't think you'd pull this off." "We're not done yet," Logan replied. The next morning, the police raided the building, seizing the goods and arresting several of Ray's men. The news spread quickly, sending a ripple of hope through Parkside. But Logan knew better than to celebrate too soon. Ray was still out there, and he wouldn't take this lying down. That afternoon, as Logan walked through the neighborhood, he noticed a black car idling near the corner. The windows were tinted, and the driver's face was obscured. Logan's instincts prickled. He knew Ray was watching, waiting for his chance to strike back. As he returned to the gym, Logan gathered his team once more. "We've won this round," he said, "but Ray's not finished. Stay alert, watch each other's backs, and be ready for anything." The fight for Parkside was far from over, but Logan and his allies were ready. They weren't just defending their neighborhood, they were reclaiming it. And they wouldn't stop until it was safe for everyone. The early morning sun painted Parkside in hues of gold and orange, but the beauty of the day couldn't mask the tension that hung over the neighborhood. Logan Carter stood outside the gym, his hands resting on his hips as he surveyed the street. Every car that slowed down, every shadow that shifted, felt like a potential threat. Ray Doran was still out there, and Logan knew it was only a matter of time before he retaliated. Inside the gym, the team gathered for a critical meeting. The group had grown over the weeks, with more community members stepping forward to join the fight. Marisol, Marcus, Elliot, Luis, and Jalen were at the core, but now there were others, business owners, teachers, even a retired firefighter, ready to stand alongside them. Logan stood at the center of the group, his voice calm but commanding. "We've done well so far. The warehouse is gone, and the cops took out the operation on 16th Street. But Ray's still got resources, and he's not going to stop until he takes back control. We need to hit him where it hurts." "What's left?" Marcus asked. "We've already cut off 2 of his main operations." "His network," Elliot chimed in, typing furiously on his laptop. "Ray's been trying to stay under the radar since the last raid, but I've been tracking him. He's still coordinating with his crew through burner phones and encrypted messages. If we can intercept those and tie him directly to the crimes, we've got him." Luis nodded. "If we can prove Ray's the mastermind, the DA will have everything they need to bring him down for good." "Good," Logan said. "Elliot, keep tracking his communications. Marcus, double-check the cameras we've set up. We need eyes on every corner." "What about the neighborhood?" Marisol asked. "People are scared. Some are starting to wonder if we're making things worse." Logan looked around the room, his gaze settling on each person in turn. "We remind them why we're doing this. We're not just fighting Ray. We're fighting for Parkside, for our families, our kids, and our future." Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly to execute their plan. Elliot monitored Ray's communications, carefully piecing together a map of his movements and associates. Marcus repaired and upgraded the surveillance network, ensuring they had a clear view of every major street. Meanwhile, Logan and Luis focused on rallying the community. They visited shops, schools, and homes, urging people to stay strong and united. "Ray's trying to scare us into submission," Logan told a gathering at Marisol's cafe. "But every time we stand up to him, we show him we're not afraid. Together, we're stronger than he is." The breakthrough came late one evening when Elliot intercepted a series of messages from one of Ray's crew members. The texts were vague, but mentioned a meeting at an abandoned factory on the edge of Parkside. "This could be it," Elliot said, showing the messages to Logan and Luis. "They're planning something big. If we can catch them in the act, it'll be the nail in Ray's coffin." Logan nodded. "Then we move. Marcus, get the cameras ready. Luis, let the cops know what we've got, but tell them to hang back until we give the signal. We don't want Ray slipping through our fingers." "What about me?" Jalen asked, his voice steady but eager. "You're staying here," Logan said firmly. Jalen's face fell, but he didn't argue. He knew better than to push when Logan gave him that tone. The team set out just before midnight. Logan, Luis, and Marcus positioned themselves near the factory, while Elliot monitored the cameras from a secure location. The night was still, the air heavy with anticipation. "Got movement," Elliot's voice crackled through the earpieces. 3 cars just pulled up. Ray's there, along with Vince and Tucker. "Looks like about a dozen guys total." Logan crouched behind a stack of crates, his eyes narrowing as he spotted Ray stepping out of one of the cars. The gang leader's sharp features were illuminated by the faint glow of the factory's floodlights. He was animated, gesturing wildly as he spoke to his crew. "This is our chance," Logan whispered. "We get this on camera, and he's done." The operation was going smoothly until one of the gang members spotted one of Marcus's hidden cameras. "Hey!" the man shouted, pointing at the lens. "They're watching us." Chaos erupted as Ray's crew scrambled to cover their tracks. Ray shouted orders, his voice cutting through the noise. "Find whoever's out there. Take them out." Logan cursed under his breath. "We're blown. Marcus, Luis, fall back. Elliot, call the cops now." Ray's men fanned out, searching the area with flashlights and weapons. Logan stayed low, moving silently through the shadows. His heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was clear. When 2 of Ray's men came too close, Logan sprang into action. He disarmed the first with a swift strike to the wrist, sending the man's weapon clattering to the ground. The second swung wildly, but Logan ducked and countered with a sharp jab that sent him sprawling. More men approached, their footsteps echoing in the empty factory. Logan fought with precision and control, using every bit of his training to stay ahead of them. Luis and Marcus joined the fray, holding their own against the attackers. Marcus used his size and strength to overpower his opponents, while Luis's police training made him a force to be reckoned with. The sound of sirens grew louder, signaling the arrival of the police. Ray's crew scattered, some trying to escape while others fought desperately to hold their ground. When the dust settled, several of Ray's men were in handcuffs, and the police had seized enough evidence to link Ray to multiple crimes. But Ray himself had escaped, slipping away in the chaos. Logan stood in the middle of the factory, his chest heaving as he surveyed the aftermath. "We've got most of them," he said to Luis, "but Ray's still out there." Luis nodded grimly. "He's running scared now. That makes him dangerous." Logan clenched his fists. "Then we finish this, one way or another." The night ended with mixed emotions. The team had dealt a significant blow to Ray's operation, but the fact that he was still free left a bitter taste. As Logan returned to the gym, he found Jalen waiting for him, his eyes wide with concern. "Did you get him?" Jalen asked. "Not yet," Logan replied, "but we will." The fight for Parkside wasn't over, but Logan and his team were closer than ever to bringing Ray down. They had the momentum, the evidence, and the community on their side. All that remained was the final confrontation, and Logan was ready. The air in Parkside was electric with tension. The events at the factory had shaken Ray Doran's crew to its core, leaving them fragmented and desperate. But Ray himself had vanished, retreating into the shadows to plot his next move. Logan Carter knew it was only a matter of time before Ray resurfaced, and when he did, it would be with a vengeance. Logan spent the days after the raid preparing for the inevitable. The gym became the unofficial headquarters of the neighborhood's resistance, bustling with activity as residents came together to plan, train, and share information. Luis paced near the punching bags, a phone pressed to his ear. "The cops are following up on leads, but Ray's slippery," he said after ending the call. "They think he's holed up somewhere nearby." Regrouping, Marcus crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. "How long before he comes after us?" "Not long," Logan replied, his voice calm but firm. "He's running out of options, and desperate men make dangerous decisions." Marisol approached, her expression worried but resolute. "What do we do when he shows up?" "We stand our ground," Logan said. "We've come too far to back down now." The storm hit just 3 nights later. It began with a phone call from Elliot, his voice breathless and urgent. "Logan, they're moving," Elliot said. "Ray and what's left of his crew. They're heading for the gym. I count 3 cars, maybe more." Logan hung up and turned to the group gathered in the gym. "It's time," he said simply. The team moved quickly, locking the doors and positioning themselves strategically around the building. Marcus stood near the entrance, a heavy wrench in hand, while Luis secured the back exit. Marisol stayed with Nico in a safe room they'd prepared, ensuring the boy would be out of harm's way. Logan stood in the center of the gym, his fists clenched as he prepared for the fight to come. The sound of tires screeching outside announced their arrival. Ray's voice rang out, sharp and taunting. "Carter, come out and face me like a man." Logan stepped toward the front door, his broad frame silhouetted against the light from the street. He pushed the door open, meeting Ray's cold, calculating gaze. "You shouldn't have come here, Ray," Logan said, his voice low and steady. Ray smirked. "You think you've won? You've got nothing. This neighborhood is mine, and you're just another fool who doesn't know when to quit." "Funny," Logan replied. "I was about to say the same thing." Ray's smirk faded, replaced by a sneer. "Get him." Ray's men charged, a chaotic mix of desperation and aggression. Marcus was the first to engage, using his wrench to disarm one attacker before sending him sprawling with a powerful shove. Luis moved with precision, his years of police training evident as he took down 2 men in quick succession. Inside the gym, Logan held his ground as 3 of Ray's men rushed him. The first swung a crowbar, but Logan ducked and countered with a devastating uppercut that sent the man reeling. The second lunged with a knife, but Logan sidestepped and delivered a sharp elbow to his ribs. The third hesitated, clearly realizing he was outmatched. Logan stared him down, his voice calm but commanding. "Walk away." The man dropped his weapon and fled. Amid the chaos, Ray himself entered the gym, flanked by Vince and Tucker. "This ends tonight, Carter," Ray said, his tone venomous. Logan stepped forward, his stance steady. "It does, but not the way you think." Ray lunged at Logan, throwing a wild punch that Logan easily deflected. He countered with a precise jab to Ray's jaw, sending him stumbling back. Vince and Tucker moved to intervene, but Marcus and Luis intercepted them, forcing them into a brutal close-quarters fight. Logan stayed focused on Ray, the two circling each other like predators. Ray attacked again, this time with a knife he pulled from his belt. Logan dodged the blade with practiced ease, grabbing Ray's wrist and twisting it until the knife clattered to the ground. "You're done, Ray," Logan said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Ray snarled and swung wildly, but Logan blocked each blow, his movements precise and unyielding. With a final, powerful strike, Logan sent Ray crashing to the ground. The sound of approaching sirens signaled the end of the fight. The police arrived in force, quickly apprehending Ray and his remaining men. Vince and Tucker were dragged out in handcuffs, their faces battered and defeated. As Ray was hauled to his feet, he glared at Logan with unbridled hatred. "This isn't over," he spat. "It is for you," Logan replied. "You just don't know it yet." The cops led Ray away, and the gym fell quiet. In the aftermath, Logan and his team surveyed the damage. The gym was battered but still standing, a testament to their resilience. Marisol emerged from the safe room with Nico, her eyes filled with relief. She hugged Logan tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "It wasn't just me," Logan said, glancing at the team. "We did this together." Word of the victory spread quickly through Parkside. People gathered outside the gym, their faces lit with hope and admiration. "You saved us," an older woman said, her voice quivering with gratitude. "We saved each other," Logan replied. That night, as the neighborhood celebrated, Logan sat alone in the gym, the faint hum of the fluorescent lights filling the silence. He thought about the fight, the people who had stood beside him, and the future they had secured for Parkside. The battle was over, but the work was just beginning. Logan knew there would be challenges ahead, but he also knew that Parkside was stronger than ever. And for the first time in a long time, the neighborhood felt like home again. The morning after the fight, Parkside woke to a sense of peace it hadn't known in years. The tension that had gripped the neighborhood was gone, replaced by cautious optimism. The sunlight filtered through the trees lining the streets, illuminating a community that had found its strength. Logan Carter stood outside the gym, watching his neighbors gathered in small groups to talk, laugh, and share stories about the night before. There were still signs of the struggle, shattered glass, a few boarded-up windows, but those felt insignificant compared to the triumph they had achieved. Marisol approached, holding a tray of fresh coffee. Her son Nico trailed behind, clutching a handmade thank you card. "Morning, hero," Marisol said, offering Logan a cup. Logan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I'm no hero. I just did what had to be done." Nico stepped forward, shyly extending the card. It was covered in colorful scribbles and read, "Thank you for keeping us safe." Logan crouched to Nico's level, accepting the card with a warm smile. "This means a lot, buddy. Thank you." Over the next few days, the neighborhood came together to rebuild. Broken windows were replaced, graffiti was scrubbed clean, and businesses reopened their doors. The gym became a hub of activity, not just for training but for planning the restoration of Parkside. Marcus organized a crew to repair the damage to the gym, while Marisol's cafe became the go-to spot for volunteers to grab a meal. Luis used his connections to ensure that Ray and his crew would face the full weight of the law, attending court hearings and providing testimony. Elliot, always the tech wizard, set up a neighborhood watch system using cameras and apps to keep everyone connected and alert. "This is what a real community looks like," Logan said one evening as he watched a group of teenagers repaint a mural on a wall that had been defaced. The gym was fully operational again within a week, But Logan knew his role was shifting. He had started this fight because he couldn't stand by and watch his neighborhood crumble. Now that it was on the path to recovery, he felt it was time to step back and let the community take the lead. One evening, Logan called a meeting with his core team: Marisol, Marcus, Luis, and Elliot. "I've been thinking," Logan began, his tone measured. "The neighborhood doesn't need me the way it did before. You've all proven that you can handle this." "What are you saying?" Marisol asked, her brow furrowed. Logan exhaled slowly. "I think it's time for me to move on. The gym is in good hands, and Parkside is stronger than ever. You don't need me here to keep it that way." The room fell silent. Marcus was the first to speak, his voice gruff but understanding. "You've earned a break, Carter. But don't think for a second we won't call you if we need you." Logan smiled faintly. "I wouldn't expect anything less." The neighborhood threw a celebration the following weekend, a way to thank Logan and everyone who had played a role in taking Parkside back. The streets were filled with music, laughter, and the smell of barbecue. Logan stood at the edge of the crowd, content to watch as families danced and children played. Marisol found him there, handing him a plate piled high with food. "You're really leaving?" she asked. Logan nodded. "It's time. This place is home, but there's more I need to do." Marisol studied him for a moment, then smiled. "Wherever you go, they're lucky to have you." On his last day in Parkside, Logan walked through the neighborhood, taking in the sights and sounds of a community that had reclaimed its identity. He stopped by Marisol's cafe, Marcus's shop, and Mrs. Patel's store, exchanging smiles and goodbyes with the people he had fought for. As he returned to the gym one final time, Jalen was waiting for him. "You're really leaving?" Jalen asked, his voice tinged with disappointment. "I am," Logan said. "But this isn't goodbye. You've got my number, and you've got everything you need to keep moving forward." Jalen nodded, his eyes shining with determination. "I won't let you down, coach." Logan smiled, clapping the young man on the shoulder. "I know you won't." The next morning, Logan packed his truck and drove out of Parkside, the rising sun casting a warm glow over the neighborhood in his rearview mirror. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew the people of Parkside would continue to stand strong, just as they had when he first returned. For Logan, the road ahead was uncertain, but he carried with him the knowledge that he had made a difference. The fight for justice, for community, and for hope wasn't over. It never truly was. But he was ready for whatever came next. As the skyline of the city faded into the horizon, Logan Carter allowed himself a small smile. Parkside was safe, and that was enough.